The girl at the crossroads. The prairie was quiet that evening. The kind of quiet that came only after a long day's heat gave way to the soft hush of twilight. The sun sank low behind the hills, painting the sky with strokes of gold and violet, while the cicadas began their steady chorus in the grass. A dirt road wound its way between the wild sage and mesquite, a lonely path that led to nowhere in particular, except to whoever happened to be walking it. On that path stumbled a girl. She was young, no more than 19, her dress torn at the hem from days of travel, her shoes scuffed thin. Dust clung to her cheeks, and her hands trembled as she pulled a shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her hair, once neatly braided, had fallen loose in the wind, strands clinging to her face as she walked with the unsteady determination of someone with nowhere else to go. Her name was Clara. She had left behind a place she dared not name, a past she dared not carry any longer. Every step away was a step toward freedom, yet freedom felt heavier than chains when she didn't know where she might sleep or how she might eat. For 2 nights, she had survived on nothing but water from a creek and a piece of stale bread a kind woman had given her miles back. Hunger gnawed at her belly, but fear pressed even deeper into her chest. She was alone, and she had never been more aware of it. The world had always told her she was too innocent, too soft for a life that required grit. She had been raised to obey, to keep her head down, to trust that others would decide her fate. But when a choice had been forced upon her, a choice that would have stolen not only her innocence but her very sense of self, she had run. That choice had brought her here, to the wide, lonely road of the prairie. As night crept in, the wind carried the faint sound of hoofbeats. Clara froze, her heart pounding. She clutched her shawl tighter, glancing around for somewhere to hide, but there was nothing but open grass and scattered rocks. The hoofbeats grew louder until out of the dimming horizon appeared a cowboy on horseback. The rider was tall and broad-shouldered, his silhouette outlined against the dusky sky. His hat shaded his face, but his posture was easy, steady, the kind that spoke of someone at home under the endless sky. A rifle was slung across his saddle, and saddlebags hung heavy on the sides of his horse. Clara's breath hitched. Men, she had learned, could mean danger. Her instinct was to run, but her legs trembled with exhaustion, and she could hardly stand without swaying. Instead, she lowered her eyes and stepped off the path, clutching her shawl like a shield. The cowboy slowed his horse as he drew near. His voice, when he spoke, was low but not unkind. "You look like you've walked 100 miles, he said. "Where's your home, miss?" Clara swallowed hard. I don't have one." Her voice cracked from dryness, and she hated how small she sounded. The man studied her for a long moment. The silence stretched, filled only by the shifting of his horse and the chirp of crickets. Then he swung down from the saddle, boots crunching softly against the dirt. As he stepped closer, the fading light revealed more of him: tanned skin, lines of weariness etched at the corners of his eyes, and a gentleness in his expression that surprised her. "My name's Caleb Turner," he said simply. "Got a ranch a few miles west. You look half-starved, and night's falling fast. Ain't safe to be out here alone." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out something, an old wool blanket. Without another word, he held it out to her. Clara blinked, staring at the offering. She hadn't expected kindness. She hadn't expected anything but suspicion or dismissal. Her hands trembled as she reached for the blanket, the warmth of it startling against her cold fingers. For the first time in days, she felt something like safety. Her lips parted, but no words came. Caleb tilted his head. "You hungry?" She nodded, unable to trust her voice. "I've got jerky and biscuits in my bag. Nothin' fancy, but it'll keep you on your feet." He offered her the food, careful to keep a respectful distance. Clara hesitated. Every instinct told her to be cautious, but her hunger overcame her fear. She took the biscuit with shaking fingers and bit into it. The taste was dry, but to her it was manna from heaven. She ate slowly, aware of Caleb watching her, though not with judgment, just quiet concern. "Thank you," she whispered. It had been so long since she'd said those words with sincerity. Caleb gave a small nod. "You don't owe me thanks. Just looks like you needed help." For a while, they stood there in the twilight, the silence between them not heavy, but strangely gentle. Clara wrapped the blanket tighter around herself, breathing in its faint smell of smoke and leather. It felt like more than warmth, it felt like mercy. Caleb finally spoke again. "If you'll let me, I can take you to my ranch tonight. Got a roof, supper, and a fire. Safer than the road, that's for sure." Her heart pounded. To trust him was to step into the unknown again, but hadn't she already chosen the unknown by running away? And something about his steady gaze told her he wasn't a man who took advantage of fear. Clara nodded faintly. "All right." Caleb helped her onto his horse, careful not to touch more than her arm for balance. As the horse moved forward, Clara sat stiffly, clutching the blanket around her. The prairie stretched out before them, stars beginning to sparkle above. She had no idea where this choice would lead, but for the first time in days, she felt the smallest spark of hope. By the time they reached the ranch, the moon had risen high. The farmhouse stood sturdy against the night, its windows glowing with lamplight. A barn loomed nearby, and the scent of hay drifted in the air. The sound of a dog barking carried from the porch, followed by a little voice calling out, "Papa, is that you?" Clara's breath caught. A child's voice. From the doorway of the farmhouse stepped a small girl, no older than 7. She had dark braids and eyes as bright as the stars overhead. She ran down the steps, barefoot, her nightdress fluttering. When she saw Caleb, she squealed with delight. "You're home!" she cried, running to him. Caleb scooped her up with a laugh, his weariness softening. "I'm home, darlin'. And I brought someone with me." He set the girl down gently, motioning toward Clara. "This is Clara." She was on the road and needed a safe place. Clara felt her cheeks burn under the little girl's curious gaze. She clutched the blanket tighter, unsure what to say. The girl, however, smiled wide and stepped forward with the boldness only a child could have. She held out her small hand. "Hi, Clara. My name's Lydia. You can be my friend." Clara stared, stunned by the simple, unguarded kindness. Her throat tightened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt tears prick her eyes. Slowly, she knelt to take Lydia's hand, her voice trembling. "Hello, Lydia. I'd like that." And in that moment, Clara realized that though the world had cast her aside, this little ranch, this man and his daughter, might be the first place she could belong. A place at the table. The next morning, Clara woke to the faint smell of bacon and wood smoke drifting through the air. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. She lay in a small bed, soft quilts tucked around her, sunlight spilling through a curtained window. It had been so long since she had slept on anything other than cold ground or hard floors that she almost thought she was dreaming. Her eyes fluttered open, and reality returned. The farmhouse, the cowboy who had offered her a blanket, and his little girl who had offered something far more precious, kindness. Clara sat up slowly, hugging her knees to her chest. She was still wearing her worn dress, but someone, Lydia, no doubt, had left a folded nightgown on the chair nearby. A basin of water and a towel rested on the dresser, as if quietly set out for her. It made her throat ache. Who had thought to be so gentle with a stranger? After washing and straightening herself as best she could, Clara tiptoed down the narrow wooden stairs. She paused at the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. Lydia's clear voice carried through the hall, mingled with Caleb's deeper chuckle. For a moment, Clara lingered in the shadows, uncertain if she belonged there at all. Then Lydia spotted her. "Clara!" the little girl squealed, jumping from her chair. She ran across the room and threw her arms around Clara's waist as if they had been friends forever. "Papa said you'd come down for breakfast. I saved you a seat right next to me." Clara's breath caught, her heart twisting at the easy affection. She smoothed a hand over Lydia's braid, managing a soft smile. "You're very kind." Caleb looked up from the stove where he was turning bacon in a skillet. "Mornin', Clara. Hope you slept well." I did," she admitted, still hovering near the doorway. "Better than I have in a long time." "Good. Sit down, then. Lydia's been up since sunrise, asking if you were still here. She's got a way of keepin' people honest." Clara hesitated only a moment longer before taking the chair beside Lydia, who beamed as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Caleb set a plate of bacon, biscuits, and scrambled eggs before her. The food steamed invitingly, and Clara's stomach growled before she could hide it. She flushed, but Caleb only pretended not to notice, returning to the stove with an easy air. "Eat all you like. There's plenty." Clara picked at the food at first, self-conscious, but hunger soon overtook hesitation. The biscuits were soft and buttery, the eggs warm and fluffy. She ate slowly, savoring every bite. Lydia chattered beside her, telling her about the ranch, the horses, and the adventures she planned for the day. "Papa says I can show you the barn," Lydia said eagerly, swinging her legs beneath the table. "We've got 3 horses, a milk cow, and even some barn cats. Do you like cats, Clara?" Clara smiled faintly. "I do." "Then you'll fit right in," Lydia declared, as though it were settled. Clara's chest tightened at the words. Fit right in. She wanted to believe it. After breakfast, Lydia tugged Clara by the hand to see the barn. The morning sun was bright, the air crisp with the scent of dew and hay. Clara's shoes scuffed the dirt path as Lydia skipped beside her, chatting all the way. "This is Daisy," Lydia said, introducing the milk cow. "And that's Rusty, Papa's horse. He lets me ride him sometimes if he's leading the reins. And, oh, there's Whiskers." She scooped up a plump gray cat that purred loudly in her arms. Clara knelt to stroke the cat, who leaned into her touch without hesitation. For the first time in what felt like forever, Clara's smile reached her eyes. Caleb leaned against the barn door, watching them with a quiet expression. He didn't interrupt, didn't press her with questions. Clara noticed that about him. He had the steady patience of someone who knew the land and its rhythms, someone who understood that not everything could be forced. When Clara glanced up, Caleb tipped his hat slightly. "Lydia's already decided you're part of the ranch, seems like." Clara flushed, lowering her gaze. "She's very sweet. She's also stubborn as a mule," Caleb said with a faint smile. "But she's got a good heart. Always has." Clara hesitated, then asked softly, "Her mother?" Caleb's eyes shadowed. "Passed when Lydia was just a baby. Been just the 2 of us ever since." Clara swallowed, guilt tugging at her for prying. "I'm sorry." Caleb shook his head. "Life's got its hard turns. We get by." He paused, studying her with quiet seriousness. "I won't ask about your past, Clara. Not unless you want to tell it. But I will say this, you don't need to be afraid here." Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, but fear was a habit that clung like a shadow. Still, his words settled something deep inside her, like a seed of trust planted in dry ground. The days that followed were a gentle blur of routine. Clara helped Lydia gather eggs from the hens, learned how to milk Daisy under Caleb's patient instruction, and even helped prepare supper in the evenings. Each small task anchored her, reminding her she was useful, that she wasn't just a burden drifting from place to place. Lydia was her constant companion, her chatter filling the spaces where Clara's silence might have grown too heavy. At night, when the house was quiet, Clara lay awake sometimes, staring at the quilted ceiling of her room. She still carried the memories of what she had fled, the controlling hands, the leering eyes, the whispered threats. But here, in this farmhouse, the air was different. Safer. One evening, after supper, Lydia insisted Clara read to her by the fire. Clara's voice trembled at first, unused to speaking so much, but soon she fell into the rhythm of the words, the flicker of the firelight dancing across Lydia's sleepy face. Caleb sat nearby, polishing his rifle, but Clara noticed he was listening too, a faint smile tugging at his lips. When the story ended, Lydia yawned and leaned against Clara's arm. "Will you tuck me in tonight?" she asked drowsily. Clara froze, her heart stuttering. She glanced at Caleb, uncertain if she had overstepped. But Caleb only nodded, his eyes soft. "If Clara wants to," he said gently. Clara swallowed hard, emotion tightening her chest. I'd be honored." So she carried Lydia upstairs, settling her beneath the covers, smoothing the quilt the way she remembered her own mother once had. Lydia curled close, her hand clutching Clara's fingers. "Don't go away," Lydia murmured sleepily. Clara bent her head, pressing a trembling kiss to the child's hair. "I won't," she whispered, though in her heart she wasn't sure if she could keep that promise. Later that night, Clara stood on the porch, the cool air brushing her face. Stars stretched endlessly across the sky, brighter than she had ever seen. Caleb joined her, standing a respectful distance away. "She took to you quick," he said quietly. Clara hugged the blanket around her shoulders, the same one he had given her that first night. She's easy to love." Caleb's gaze lingered on her, steady and unreadable. "So are you, Clara. If you'd let yourself believe it." Her breath caught, the words striking deeper than he knew. She turned away, blinking against the sting of tears. She had been told all her life she was nothing, that she was fragile, naive, unworthy. To hear otherwise felt almost unbearable. Caleb didn't press. He only tipped his hat and said, "Good night, Clara. Sleep well." And as she watched him go back inside, Clara realized something she hadn't dared hope for in years. She was beginning to feel like she belonged. When the past came knocking, the ranch had begun to feel like home. Days passed in gentle rhythm, feeding animals, cooking meals, evenings spent by the fire with Lydia snuggled at her side. Clara found herself laughing more, her hands steadier, her steps lighter. She had begun to believe she might have a place in this world after all. But the past has a way of finding what runs from it. It was a late afternoon when Clara's peace was broken. She had just finished hanging laundry on the line, the wind tugging at the sheets like white sails, when the distant sound of hoofbeats reached her ears. Not the familiar rhythm of Caleb's horse, nor the soft patter of Lydia running barefoot. This was sharper, urgent. Clara froze. Her stomach twisted. She knew before she saw who it was. 2 men rode toward the ranch. Their faces shadowed beneath wide-brimmed hats, their coats dusted with trail dirt. One of them she recognized instantly, Mr. Harland, the man she had fled from. His eyes had always been cold, calculating, the eyes of a man who believed possession was the same as love. Clara's hands shook as she clutched the edge of the sheet. She wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. "Clara!" Lydia's voice rang out from the porch. The little girl skipped toward her, unaware of the danger. "No!" Clara whispered, panic flooding her. "Stay back, Lydia." Caleb appeared then, stepping onto the porch with his rifle slung casually over his arm. His eyes narrowed as he spotted the riders approaching. In 3 strides, he was in the yard, placing himself between Clara and the men. The horses slowed to a stop, dust swirling around them. Mr. Harland dismounted, his smile as sharp as a knife. "Well, well. Thought I'd lost her out here in the dust. But seems she's been hidin' on your land, Turner." Caleb's expression didn't change, but his voice was iron. "She's under my roof. That makes her under my protection." Harland laughed. "Protection? That girl belongs to me. Promised fair and square. She ran, but she's mine. I've come to collect what's owed." Clara's breath hitched. "I am not yours," she said, her voice trembling but stronger than she thought possible. Harland's smile faltered, turning cruel. He stepped forward, but Caleb leveled his rifle with a calm steadiness that froze the air. "You'll turn that horse around and ride out," Caleb said quietly. "You've got no claim here." The other man shifted uneasily, glancing between them. Harland sneered. "You'll risk your neck for a girl you hardly know? She's nothin' but trouble." Caleb's gaze flicked to Clara, then back to Harland. "She's not trouble. She's family." The word struck Clara like a lightning bolt, lodging deep in her chest. "Family." Harland snarled, but the barrel of Caleb's rifle didn't waver. Finally, with a curse, he spat in the dirt and swung back onto his horse. "This ain't over, Turner. She'll come crawlin' back, once she realizes you can't protect her forever." They rode off, dust trailing in their wake. Clara stood trembling, her hands clutched against her chest. When they were gone, her knees gave way, and she sank to the ground. Caleb was at her side in an instant, steadying her. "It's all right," he murmured. "They won't hurt you. Not while I've got breath in me." Clara buried her face in her hands. "He'll come back. He always does." "Then let him," Caleb said firmly. "Because this time you're not alone." That night, Clara couldn't eat. She sat by the fire, staring into the flames, the blanket Caleb had once given her wrapped tight around her shoulders. Lydia climbed into her lap, resting her head against Clara's chest. "Don't be scared," Lydia whispered. "Papa says you're safe here. And Papa's always right." Clara's throat ached as she pressed a kiss to the child's hair. "I want to believe that," she whispered. Caleb came in from the porch, his face set with quiet determination. He pulled up a chair across from her. "Clara," he said gently, "I won't ask you to tell me what you've been through. But I need you to know something. That man was wrong. You don't belong to him. You don't belong to anyone who'd treat you like property." Clara's eyes burned. "Then who do I belong to?" Caleb's gaze softened. "To yourself. And if you'll have it, to this family. To me and Lydia. Not because we claim you, but because we choose you. And because you deserve to be chosen." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever offered belonging without condition, without demand. Lydia sat up, her small hands cupping Clara's face. "I already chose you," she said solemnly. "You're my Clara now." The dam inside Clara broke. She pulled Lydia close, sobbing quietly into her hair. Caleb leaned forward, his hand resting gently on Clara's shoulder, not pushing, not claiming, just steady. And in that moment, she knew. She wasn't running anymore. The weeks that followed were not without fear. Clara still glanced over her shoulder, still startled at unexpected sounds, but something inside her had changed. She was no longer just surviving. She was living. She cooked and laughed and read stories by the fire. She sang with Lydia in the barn. She rode Rusty with Caleb guiding the reins, the wind whipping her hair free. Slowly, the weight of her past loosened its grip. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in fire and gold, Caleb and Clara stood on the porch together. Lydia chased fireflies in the yard, her laughter floating through the air. "You've brought light back to this house," Caleb said quietly. Clara looked at him, her heart fluttering. "I thought I had nothing left to give." "You were wrong," Caleb said, his eyes steady on hers. "You've given us more than you know." The silence between them stretched, full of unspoken words. Finally, Clara whispered, "Thank you for the blanket, for your kindness, for seeing me when no one else did." Caleb tipped his hat slightly, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You don't need to thank me, Clara. Just stay. That's thanks enough." Clara's chest swelled with something new, something fragile but strong. Hope. Belonging. Perhaps even love. As Lydia ran up the porch steps, fireflies glowing in her cupped hands, Clara knew the truth. She had been innocent and afraid, but now she had a family. A place at the table. A home. And it had begun with a cowboy's blanket and a little girl's heart.